Okay, good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us for today's Education Advocates call. We've got a short agenda with lots of big topic items. We've got the ESSER II deployment, we've got the CSCT reimbursement for schools, and OPI's legislation. I'd like to open it up to Mr. Paul Taylor and Mr. Jay Phillips from here at the OPI to walk us through the current status of the ESSER II deployment, recognizing, of course, that Section E is still meeting right now to decide the final terms of this, but we'll share what we know. Paul, Jay?
Morning, everybody. So Paul, I can start off too. And so, yeah, like Sarah had mentioned, we're still looking for the education subcommittee to finalize what they're going to approve for the actual allowable uses of how those funding is going to be distributed. And the main component that I think that we'll be having the discussions with is the 10% reserve that's set aside. And so for those of you that kind of remember, Sarah, can I share my screen real quick just so I can walk through this? Okay. Everybody see that? Is that good? Okay. And so again, kind of remember that the total ESSER II funds that we're going to receive at OPI or to the state is that $170 million. And the component of it that the legislature, the subcommittee is really debating on is that 10% of what we're going to call the SCA reserve. And so that's that $153 million right here that, again, has a lot of bit of flexibility in how the superintendent or the state of Montana can actually utilize those funds. And the proposal by OPI, again, I think has brought forward some questions from the legislature. Legislators maybe having kind of an idea of how those funds can actually be expended, what's the most appropriate use, and what's the most effective way to actually help out the schools that could be receiving the funding through that reserve set aside. You know, during the education subcommittee initial presentation for OPI, Superintendent Arson really tried to push forward that OPI is in need of what we're going to call the 0.5%, which is 0.5% of the 10% reserve that OPI would use to administer the program itself. That would be hiring accountants, program people to provide system of support to the external stakeholders, and then also just inside for tracking the funds and for reporting at the state level. So Superintendent Arson has kind of pressed that we really need that so we can get the program up and going. The 90%, I will say, she's also asking the education subcommittee to release those funds, and so that OPI has the ability to go ahead and get those funds set up and available to schools, and so they can start drawing down funds, creating budgets and drawing down those funds. OPI is currently in the process working with our vendor, MTW, which they house our grants management system, which is the mechanism that OPI will use to distribute the funds, not only the budget applications, but to do cash requests and any type of reporting requirements that we have the Department of Education. And so those two pieces, I think that my understanding is that they're going to go through pretty quickly. I don't think there's a lot of opposition as to getting those components of the funding approved and moving forward. Again, the biggest pieces, I think that there's still a little bit of discussion about how it is that the remaining 9.5% will be used. And this is an overview of the proposal that OPI had presented to the education subcommittee for our ideas of how those fundings can be used to best serve those who are most impacted by COVID, and kind of addressing any type of budgetary issues that the schools may have, and then also trying to remove the risk of the learning loss out there as kids are trying to adapt to doing part-time in the schools, or if they're actually fully remotely being taught. And so again, I think that going through the list, some of the bigger pieces, I think that is that $8 million. There's been a lot of call for OPI to utilize that funding to help to enhance its current internal systems, to better collect data, not only for Department of Education for the reporting of it, but then just in general as a better tool that we have available for the schools to report data or to utilize any of the information that OPI collects to just come out with better outcomes and better reporting on what we can do and how we're best serving the kids. And so, again, I think that this week, some of the biggest pieces here we're going to see is kind of that $8 million a little bit of this 3.3 million about how the funding in the past, or how the funding will get out to kids that are at risk or maybe have more of the special ed needs under IDEA regulations. And so again, we're expecting the subcommittee to come together with those. And again, I'm not sure, I haven't heard anything additional that they've got any other ideas, but I think those are going to be the hottest topics that we're going to see during the executive action this week. So I'll kind of leave it at that. Paul, do you have anything that you want to interject to that? Because I know that you guys did have some additional meetings this week in regards to some of this. So
yeah, no, Jay, I think you did a great job at summarizing the key points that are on the superintendent's proposal. I also agree with you. There's still negotiation to be done. I believe that the legislature needs to make decisions. I'll tell you what, I'll leave it at this. I'm available to answer questions if there's questions associated with this, but I have nothing really much further to say about the topic.
Okay, there's not a whole lot to decide right now while they're still in the hearing. So let's go ahead and move to agenda item 2, the CSCD Medicaid reimbursement for schools. Deputy Allen, would you take that for us?
You're on mute.
Let me try again. Good morning, everybody. Good to see your smiling pictures, your smiling faces, and your friendly names. So Jay Phillips and myself have been meeting with DPHHS on the CSCT program. And what's at the heart of this is that the legislature is not, it doesn't sound like, going to allocate dollars for DPHHS to match CSCT services any longer, and are asking for school districts that have this program to figure out how to have that actual cash match. Some of it sounds like a bit of a shell game, so Jay and I are in discussions with folks to see whether or not this, first of all, will work for the state budget and rules around funding. And we'll be giving far more information on this. We're in a preliminary stage. So the idea is that school districts would take 34 cents per dollar of their general fund, because it requires state dollar matching. They would send it to DPHHS, who would then notify Medicare that indeed there's been expended the 34 cents per dollar match, and Medicare will send 66 cents of that dollar, so 1/3, 2/3. And then DPHHS will send all of the money back to the school districts, including the 34% that school districts are required to show as a match. You can see there's elements of that are raising a bit of red flags, first and foremost, starting with whether or not school districts even have the dollars that they could allocate from the general fund. We have about 75 school districts that participate in 2,400 students. And I want to say the match is around 24 million total. So correct me if I got the wrong number on that, Jay.
no, that's right, Cheryl. Yep.
And so it's looking at how to ensure that services that are absolutely necessary and vital for so many of our kids can be provided. So we're looking for solutions. So if you have thoughts or ideas, we're all ears. So I'm certain that silence means you're just thinking about it, that you'll have some amazing ideas. Please, if you do, send them our way. We need your thinking on this as well. Thank you. Jay, anything to add while folks are thinking on this?
No, the other thing I'll say, is that, kind of just to expand on what Cheryl was saying about OPI's concern of it is that, at the state level, under the current program, when DPHHS receives money, they use the general fund dollars to pay out so that we can show that we made a match. But the fact that they received 100% reimbursement back from Medicaid, it really presents from an accounting perspective that they really did not incur any type of expenditure. And so the Medicaid coming back and saying, we really don't think that this is an allowable way, or that you guys are in fact distributing money as a match piece of this requirement, but now saying that, well, at the local level, if we kind of do the same type of a scenario, that, well, no, we do believe that that'll work, and kind of talking with, Masbo and Denise over there, some of their concerns are the same, is that, although you can present that you are paying out money through a local general fund, on the back end, you're receiving that money fully and making yourself whole. But even though you record it as a state special or different funding type, it still begs the question of, is this really allowable? Is this legal? I think, like Cheryl said, it's a shell game, but, I also think it poses a lot of risk on the part of OPI and also at the local level, because in the event that you don't meet a match requirement, or CMS comes back and says, no, we don't agree with it, then, this local level, and they're at risk of having to pay those dollars back. And so, there's a lot to consider, that OPI has to give specific accounting guidance and all this, and Paul can attest to that, that there's a strong reliance on our ability and what we actually provide out. And, if we see that there's risk, we just want to make sure that we're being good stewards, for our schools, and making sure that we mitigate any risk that they may incur at the local level. So again, I think that there's, a lot on the table. The fact the legislature doesn't want to fund it, but the fact that we need it, I still think that shows that we're kind of passing down the cost at the local level, which, I think based on our discussions, that's something that they can afford. And so I think there's a lot at risk here, but that's why I think that great minds need to come together. And if we can come up with some type of solution, I think that's absolutely critical.
Thanks, Jay.
Jay. If
Sarah,
there are no
back to you.
questions, we can move into the legislative agenda for the OPI. It's going to be pretty short and sweet. There's not a whole lot that's new. Of course, we started the session with our 4 priorities. Brief update on where those are. House Bill 15, Fred Anderson's increase to the base aid inflationary index, will be on the Senate floor today. House Bill 46, adding special education as a component of base aid, is still in committee with Representative Beatty. There are 2 opportunities to solve the in-state treatment issue. Mafi Funk's House Bill 25 and Representative Beatty's House Bill 206. Neither one of those has moved just yet. And our last priority was moving the E-rate broadband program from Commerce back to the OPI to better serve schools. That's House Bill 181 with Representative Zolnikov that is still in committee as well. Other legislative updates. Friday was Indian Education for All Day, celebrating the addition to Montana schools with the IFA program. We were treated to an honor song by Representatives Windy Boy and Weatherwax in special announcements on the floor, and all of the members were given documents sharing the history and the curriculum available to schools for Indian Education for All, as well as a sweetgrass blade to celebrate the culture that IFA brings to our schools. We have 2 new priorities that we've requested that are dropping this week that I wanted to make sure you all had an opportunity to hear. The first one, Senator Sweeney presented yesterday, Senate Bill 206. This is a simple little cleanup bill, as we all like to say, simply moving the critical educator shortage reporting date by 60 days. As it stands right now, statute requires the data collection from schools to be submitted in teams on December 1st. But it also requires the OPI to compile complete quality assurance and submit the report of that data to the Board of Public Ed also on the same day, December 1st. The data is not used by schools until fall. So what we've asked is for 60 days for the OPI to be able to compile a complete and accurate report due to the board by February 1st. That had a good first hearing yesterday. We don't think that it causes any delays for schools, but it allows us to not be perpetually late in our presentation to the board with that data. The last bill that's going to come forward this week, Representatives Welsh and Walsh from Beaverhead County are moving forward with a proposal dealing with disrupted youth and their ability to get a diploma in Montana. I don't think we've reached full consensus with McCall and the team at the Board of Ed yet, but I wanted to let the rest of you know what it is. What it is a bill that allows disrupted youth to apply for a state diploma on the recommendation of the superintendent and the issuance by the Board of Public Ed. We're still working out details before that one goes fully live, but that is coming. Other than that, business as usual. I think all of our counterparts are in the Section E subcommittee hearing today, and I'm guessing we're all anxious to get back to that to see how things are progressing. Does anyone have questions for me on where our agenda stands or some of the new proposals we're bringing forward this week? Easy peasy. Okay, well, I know we're all anxious to get back to the subcommittee, so thank you very much for joining us in this bottlenecked day, and we look forward to seeing you again soon. Thanks.